Hello beautiful people, my name is Cherisse and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to speak on releasing and healing shame, specifically around addiction and after addiction. I did want to direct this specifically to people with a history with addiction because I personally am on my own healing journey around releasing and healing shame, and most of the shame that I am releasing for the most part has to do with things that I've done while I was in severe addiction. I was an alcoholic for almost 10 years. I also want to start off this video by saying that with my videos on releasing shame and encouraging self-love and your worthiness of love, I'm in no way condoning abuse, but I am trying to create a safe space for people who are trying to create deeper healing in their life so you can treat yourself as well as the other people in your life better. So I just wanted to give you guys some tips that I personally have learned that helped me a lot along my journey with releasing shame. I will say that I am still in the midst of this journey, and when you've made mistakes in your life, whether they are related to addiction or not, I think that that journey with releasing shame and that journey with self-forgiveness definitely has its good days and its bad days. I find that on some days I feel really good about myself and I'm like, you know what, yeah, I've worked through this really well, and other days it is quite a bit more of a struggle. So if you are at either of those points, I want you to know that you are not alone in whatever type of shame that you are learning how to release. So my first tip for releasing shame, you have to take complete responsibility for the mistakes that you've made as well as the harm that you have done to other people. I do believe that you can experience shame while also living in a certain state of denial, where perhaps you're like, oh, well, maybe that person deserved it anyway, but there's still shame that you're experiencing, possibly suppressed shame. I do think the first step to releasing that shame is by actually taking responsibility for that, taking responsibility for the choices that you've made in life that have led you up to this point, to the person that you are today, for the mistakes that you've made in the past. Once you've taken responsibility for that, it is time for you to take an initiative. Perhaps you can do this one before even taking responsibility, but I generally find that once you take responsibility for your shame, at this point, now is the time for you to take an initiative to make a change in your life away from whatever it is that is causing that repetitive feeling of shame, which, as this video we're going over, is specifically around addiction. That being said, if you are someone who loves somebody else who is within addiction, or you are somebody who is within addiction, you can never make somebody else change. You can never be a force to pull them out of that addiction unless they want to truly make that change themselves. As somebody who has been an addict, who has dated addicts, who has friends who are addicts and have been addicts, if you are within addiction, you have to make the change. If you want to see a change in your life, if you are tired of the person that you are or the person that you've been, it is your responsibility You have to take responsibility over yourself and your actions. And I do understand that addiction can be very difficult at times to give up and walk away from and change, but you are fully capable of doing that. And no, somebody else cannot pull you out of that and make that change for you. But yes, you can reach out to people for help to pull you out of that. But as somebody who has experienced someone reaching out to me to help them get out of a meth addiction, but they didn't actually mean it, I gathered the resources to help them out of that addiction, just to find that no, they were just claiming that to keep me in their life. So you have to actually want that change. But it is possible to change, and I do encourage you to reach out to people in your life if you do need support, because I think often, most of the time, if you are with an addiction, you do need some type of support system to help pull you out of that. So I do encourage you to reach out to somebody to help get you out of that addiction. The next step is to give yourself compassion. This is possibly one of the harder steps, learning self-forgiveness. First of all, everybody makes mistakes, and I do acknowledge that some mistakes are worse than others. I do think some of the mistakes that I've made with an addiction would be on the worse side. Perhaps not compared to everybody's mistakes, but you really have to be able to take a look at the mistakes that you've made and leave that in the past. You're not bound to your past, and you're not bound to your past mistakes. Give yourself kindness now. Give yourself compassion. Give yourself a safe space to heal and outgrow that old version of yourself. Well, it is good to take responsibility for the choices that you've made in life and the things that you've done. Speak kindly to yourself. I'm not encouraging you to just sit in front of the mirror and being like, I'm admitting that I'm a worthless piece of shit. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying with this. Be kind to yourself while you're in that place of acknowledging the mistakes that you've made. I have definitely been a piece of shit. I have been a piece of shit many times while I was within addiction, but that does not mean that is who I am. And sometimes I know that even as somebody who has worked so much on my self-love journey and my healing journey, I still at times stoop down to that level. Thankfully, I pull myself up out of it much faster than I used to, but just be kind to yourself. Try to be kind to yourself. My next step is to talk to somebody. I do believe that shame grows in the silence. Shame kills you in your silence. I think it's important to be careful about who you open up to, that this is a compassionate and safe space for you to be open. Perhaps therapy is a great option for some people. I am actually in the works of getting into therapy right now myself, so if that's what you're doing, we're in this together. There might be support groups in your area for addiction rehabilitation and shame specifically. Perhaps you have friendships. I have my best friend who is one of the only people that I really open up to about most things, but I do have a couple other friends as well who are very compassionate, and that doesn't mean that they don't necessarily judge me a little bit, but they never shame me for the things that I open up to them about, and they give me a safe space to kind of lay down that burden so I'm not carrying it alone. And I'm not telling you to just trauma dump on anybody and just drain the fuck out of people's energy by telling them all the bad things that you've done, but find a safe space where you can talk to somebody about the shame that you feel, about the mistakes that you've made. But like I said, choose wisely. Please do choose wisely, because I do not want to encourage you to do something that is going to perpetuate that cycle of shaming. And I think shame is such a massive weapon in society, in the world today, in religion, in schools, like everywhere. It's actually a very common issue, I think, and it's so normalized by society to shame people for so many different things, and especially for people who have been in addiction or made mistakes. Being shamed for that is extraordinarily socially acceptable, and it can feel really dark, especially if you are somebody who has been in addiction and is trying to heal from the mistakes that you've made in that portion of your life. So it's like, be careful. This is like the third time I've said it. Be careful about who you open up with. And if you do open up to friends in your life, perhaps about something that you have done or something that you're ashamed of, and their response is to deeply shame you for what you do, I hope that you take that as an opportunity to take a look at that relationship and really question whether that is somebody that you truly want in your life still, considering that you are now on a path of healing. I know it can be difficult to release and end relationships and walk away from people who do not love and respect you and treat you with compassion. But if this is where you are at right now on your journey, is you are trying to release shame, you are trying to release your past and move on from the person that you have been, and the relationships that you have in your life are not encouraging that deeper state of compassion and healing, perhaps those are relationships that it's time for you to walk away from and leave in the past as well, with the older version of yourself. My fourth tip is to practice being present, finding ways to deal with your stress in healthy manners. I personally love meditation and yoga. They are two of my most healing presence practices that I participate in. So many P's. Oh, that was so fun to say. But ice baths, ice showers. I like to take ice dips in like rivers. It's just, it feels more grounding than doing it in the shower. Just ice dips in rivers during the winter is absolutely fantastic. Learn breathing exercises, or even just start paying attention to whether you're holding your breath or not. Start practicing deep breathing. The great thing about being somebody who is able to breathe, if you are able to breathe on your own, then you are always able to pull yourself back into the present moment simply through breathing, which can be such a powerful tool when you are learning how to release shame and no longer live in the past. Letting go of the past and forgiving yourself as well as forgiving others can sometimes be a slower process, for depending on each person. It could be a faster process, but it could be a process that takes time and repetition. Like I said earlier in the video, some days might be better and some days might be worse. I personally find that there are days that I'm doing really good and I feel great about myself, and sometimes even on those days, like, I'll think about the people that I've hurt while I was in addiction, or the mistakes that I've made, or the people that I'm not in relationship with anymore because of such types of things, people who judge me, and it like can really switch me out of that, and I can spiral out a little bit and enter into that feeling again of just deep shame and hating myself over that stuff. When this happens, please breathe deeply. Try to pull yourself back into the moment. This is why learning how to handle yourself and handle your stress in healthy coping ways is very powerful. Learning grounding, meditation. These things are so powerful in learning to remain present and release that feeling of self-hatred and shame. My 5th tip for you guys is to allow yourself to face and feel those deeper emotions. Whether it's sadness or anger or hurt or whatever it might be. And it's important to have a safe space to do this, whether you are alone or with somebody else. I personally process my emotions much better when I am alone, but I have found in like therapy type settings that it also feels like a safe place because I am being so vulnerable. That also feels like a good place to kind of confront and face those emotions. I do realize that some people might actually need a guide, somebody to sit with them and help them confront and face those emotions. Journaling is a great tool to help you process and work through your emotions. If you are a crier like I am, I encourage you to allow yourself to express yourself emotionally in that way. I've also been in the mode in the past when I was younger where I could not cry due to trauma around that kind of emotion and that form of self-expression not being allowed and being abused in my household, which I think is something that a lot of people have been through. And I found that honestly most of the people that I've met in my life have a very difficult time expressing themselves by crying, expressing their emotions in that way. And if that is where you're at, don't beat yourself up about that, because it's actually very normal. And when you've been through so much trauma and suppression around that, it can be very difficult to allow that side of yourself to come through, which is why sometimes it might be good to find some type of guide, whether a therapist or a spiritual guide or healer, to help you really breathe through, confront and face and express that emotion. I think journaling is a great way to do that, especially if you do have a hard time being around people and perhaps you're more introverted like I am. You are never too old or too young to begin journaling. And if you don't really know where to start with journaling, you can always Google ways of processing your emotions by journaling, or other just prompts for personal healing and journaling. Or you could just start off by writing whatever comes to your mind. So my 6th tip for you guys is that the opposite of shame is pride. So at this point, I encourage words of upliftment and affirmations. I participate in almost daily positive affirmations, whether I am listening to them. I will put a link below for the podcast, the positive affirmation podcast that I listen to on Spotify. It is called Chakra Affirmations by Andrea. Sometimes I write affirmations in my journal, or sometimes I simply just speak them out loud to myself. In front of a mirror is great. It really penetrates. It can be a little bit more difficult at times looking yourself in the eye and saying all these loving, sweet things about yourself, but I do believe in the power of affirmation, and especially if you are dealing with some form of shame, positive upliftment is very necessary, transforming that self-hate, that feeling of not being enough, and that feeling of unworthiness because of whatever you've gone through or have done. Some examples would be, I am proud of who I am today. I am proud of all that I have accomplished. I am proud of how far that I have come. I am proud of how much I have let go of. I am honored to be alive. My 7th tip for you is to pay attention to your body and how your body is held when you are feeling the experience of shame. I find that when I am feeling a massive amount of shame or even like disheartened or sad, you tend to crouch your shoulders a little bit. So I think that it's an energetic way of protecting your heart, and this can be for other things than just shame. But if you find yourself doing that, I encourage you to basically do the opposite. And I literally do this. You can just pull back your shoulders if you want to, but I think that it's a really cool thing and self-empowering to just represent yourself as a powerful person. Raise those arms. You're fucking powerful as fuck. I am powerful. Take that energy and transform it. Catch yourself as you are in that moment of spiraling down that energy and that feeling of shame, and snap yourself out of it. Open your heart to receive love from God, from the universe, from spirit, from others, and open your heart to give love to yourself as well as to others. You can also look up heart openers. I do heart openers in yoga, or just any exercises that really open that up. Is basically doing the opposite of what your body is doing while you are feeling that shame. And it might seem like something really simple and like weird, but I genuinely believe that this is something that helps. Also, I do encourage any form of movement and exercise. I think it encourages emotional release, especially if you are somebody who struggles with like crying or having other forms of emotional release. Exercise is really, really, really great for encouraging that movement, that energy, that shame energy to move through and out of your body. It actually can help you process emotions, perhaps in a different way, but it is also a very powerful tool. Any form of exercise is awesome. And my last little tidbit for this video is that shame, specifically shame and traumas, they're held within your hips, within your sexual organs. Even if this is not sexual shame or related to sex, it is actually that is where that emotion is stored in your body. So doing things that actually move your hips will help you to release shame. Even simple like hip circles. Literally, there are stories about people crying just from that simple movement. I personally have experienced this as well, because it is actually moving that emotion through your body, is helping you to release this. This will aid with other things, other traumas that you've been through as well, which shame generally honestly stems from trauma, I do think. And especially if you're somebody who's been, if you are within addiction or you have been in addiction, it's generally because of some type of trauma or abuse that you've been through. So that is a great tool in releasing that root wound that has led to addiction and shame. The sacral chakra, which is where all that shame is held, is also very closely related to your throat chakra. A lot of people who experience shame might have a throat blockage, which could lead to over talkativeness or no talkativeness. This is also related to trauma as well. But the throat, a great way to open up the throat would be through self-expression, talking to somebody, as well as creativity. I think creating things, whether it is art or music, you're singing, you're playing an instrument. I also have created other videos on how to be more creative and how creativity can bring more positivity into your life. I'll put links below to those videos, but creativity is a great way to open that. And because that is so closely tied to your sacral chakra, where your traumas and your shame is stored, it can actually help in releasing those areas as well. Creativity can be a great way for processing those deeper emotions and feelings of shame, as well as experiences that you've been through while you were in addiction, or the experiences that you've been through that have led up to that addiction. The sacral chakra is also all about experiencing pleasure and deep feeling. And if you are somebody who experiences shame, I don't know if this is for every form of shame, but definitely shame related to addiction for me, You probably know that when you are in deep feelings of shame, it can be very difficult actually to feel pleasure. And I think that that is a big part of why at times we have turned to other things that perhaps give us a false feeling of pleasure, but in the long run tend to perpetuate that cycle of shame and pain. So if you've been through some type of trauma, which if you're watching this, you probably have, if you've been in some type of addiction that has led to shame, it's probably because you've been through some type of traumatizing experience in your life, and perhaps that trauma led to a lack of feeling pleasure that led you into this addiction. For me, what led me into addiction was the desire to kill myself, and I was not able to actually kill myself, so I decided I was going to take the slow route and kill myself through drinking. Unfortunately, that was just, it caused a lot of pain to a lot of people, and now I have to release a lot of shame around mistakes that I made during that period of my life that I really hurt people. But there is healing, guys. I just want to say that. And who you surround yourself with while you are in this state of healing is so, so important. The people that you continue to keep in your life, a lot of times when you are leaving addiction, depending on what type of addiction and the people that you've surrounded yourself with, a lot of people who leave addiction end up having to also walk away from all the relationships that are in their life at that time. Because as somebody who has been an addict, I know that generally when you are deep in addiction, the people that you are friends with are also deep in addiction. So unless those people are also making a move in their lives to move out of addiction, sometimes you have to walk away from those relationships and those people. I'm very grateful that I still have friends. Honestly, some of my best friends are still more addicts, more stable addicts, I guess, more functioning addicts in a way, and it doesn't have a negative effect on me like it did. I think that I reached a point where I was so deeply ashamed of some of the mistakes that I made that I couldn't use anything as an excuse anymore to live in that way. I will say that I still do drink, but I do not drink like I used to, and I'm very, very careful about what I consume and how much of it I do consume. So I do believe that there is absolutely healing for whatever type of addiction that you are in. There are so many powerful stories of overcoming addiction, whether your addiction is alcohol or some type of drug, or perhaps even something else such as sex. Like, there are so many addictive things that can bring on feelings of shame, and I think that learning to release that shame is so massive and powerful in actually overcoming that addiction. I think that is a powerful point of overcoming that addiction. I think that if you are able to feel shame, that is actually a positive thing, because being able to feel shame shows that you can actually make a change in your life, and that there is a part of you that wants to do better and that is ready to do better. So I'm proud of you for being here. I am proud of myself for being here. Seriously, you're not alone. Like, I just want to say, like, I know how difficult it is at times to forgive yourself and let the past go and release shame, especially when you feel like in your heart there are people who still hate you. That can be really rough, and unfortunately, you cannot force anybody to forgive you, and that is a part of their own healing journey, and it might take a really long time, and they might honestly never forgive you. And that's a part of this journey with releasing shame for you sitting here watching this, though. This is your journey with self-love, and even if that person decides that they are never going to forgive you for the mistakes that you've made while you were in addiction, I want you to know that you can still do that. You can still change for the better, even if the people from your past are not going to accept this new version of yourself. but there are people who will. And I genuinely believe that when you make a move in the right direction to make a change in your life for the positive, to do better for yourself and for other people, that God, that the universe will bring you into alignment with relationships that are going to be healthy and healing and loving and kind and compassionate. So if you have not found that yet, I believe that that is headed your way right now. I believe in you so much. I am so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for making the steps away from whatever type of addiction it is that you have been in. And I'm so fucking proud of you for working on releasing that shame and working towards loving yourself more deeply and receiving love from others more deeply, because you deserve love. You deserve forgiveness. And like I said, perhaps the people in your life will not give that to you, but I hope that you know that you can give that to yourself. And while it may be a process and quite an interesting and perhaps a longer journey with self-love and self-forgiveness, that you really do deserve that, and that you are not alone, and that there is honestly a massive support system of people that you don't even know, of people who you don't even know, who are wishing you the best in your journey away from addiction, with your journey with self-healing, with your journey with releasing shame and the traumas that you've been through. And I'm one of those people cheering you along. I'm cheering myself along, and I know so many of you that watch my channel are also cheering me along with my own self-love and journey away from addiction. Thank you so much for being here, for watching my channel. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more. I love you so much, and I believe in you so much. I believe in you so much. You're doing so amazing. Probably better than that you think that you're doing. Even if you are still within addiction and you are watching this, or perhaps you've relapsed, or perhaps you struggle with relapsing, you are doing so much better than you think you are just by being here. Just by striving towards something better, even if you fail all the time. I fail all the time. The fact that you are trying is already way better than a lot of people. So you are not alone. I believe in you, and I love you guys. All right, bye.